Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Creative Conversations. My name is Xenia, and you have found your way to this corner of the Garden of the Imaginal Substack, where I have conversations with creative people I admire from a wide variety of creative fields to remind us that creativity is spiritual and spirituality is creative. Today, our guest is Lisa from Middle Sister Tarot. Lisa is a friend of mine and an intuitive that I get readings from whenever I'm in transition or want support or I'm about to create a new project. I have had such a good experience being held by her work. Lisa Kay, who has a business called Middle Sister Tarot, is an intuitive tarot reader, a channeler, teacher, and facilitator dedicated to helping people remember and reconnect to their own inner wisdom, guidance, nature, and the cosmos. Lisa and I are also neighbors. She lives nearby in Greenpoint. We love to go on walks together and just connect on all the magic and shifts that we're experiencing in our lives. And I'm so honored that she agreed to have this interview with us. Lisa is also going to be teaching a workshop with us on December 10th called Intro to Channeling. It's for all levels, and I hope you can come. It's going to be such a beautiful experience. If you are in Inner Sanctum, our seasonal membership, you already have access to this, and I will see you on December 10th. We'll leave the link in the show notes and in the links below. And if you are around on December 19th, we are also hosting a beautiful gathering called Cosmic Coded. The alignment in the cosmos is just so magical on this day. This is the day that Three Eye Atlas will make its closest approach to Earth. It's the day before the new moon in Sagittarius, and then 2 days before the winter solstice, one of the most powerful days to plant intentions, to make a wish. And so I hope that you will join us in this group portal to magic. And we will also leave the links to Cosmic Coded. Both of these are online, and you can sign up in the links below. So, in this conversation I have with Lisa, we talk about a lot of interesting things, including a surprisingly small object that opened up so much for Lisa's remembering and channel. We talk about premonitions in dreams Lisa had as a child. We talk about the surprising thing that occurred when Lisa joined a global meditation. And at the end, Lisa shares an impromptu channeled message and card pull for the group that I really feel like is just such a resonant message as we end this year and step into the fresh page of 2026, the year of Wheel of Fortune, the year of the Magician. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let us know what you think in the comments. And thank you so much for listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's creative conversation. I'm super excited to have my friend and someone who is a guest teacher in my containers and someone who I go to for readings, Lisa Kay from Middle Sister Tarot here. We're going to just get into what brought Lisa into the magical practices of tarot, intuitive channeling, and everything that she does now. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Lisa. Thank you for being here.
Dina, thank you for having me. I'm so excited and honored to be here.
Thank you. So I always start with this question because I'm so curious about it, which is how did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And if you want to connect it to your intuition, your relationship with creativity. Those are two things I'm always really curious about with folks.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a good one. Let's see where to start. I mean, I am the middle child of three sisters, and I think you and I connect on being one of three sisters, right? And growing up, I feel like I always was, as a young child, very much in my own world. I had my sisters, I had my friends, but I remember being very connected to these imaginary worlds. I was really obsessed with nature as a little kid. I remember I had this book, it was from maybe the 50s or 60s, illustrated book, and it was just called Nature. And I would just like pore over that book. And we had a big apple tree in our backyard when we lived in West Virginia for a few years. We moved around a bit, but we had a big apple tree in the backyard, and I was really obsessed with the apple tree. And one of the earliest things I remember wanting to be is an ornithologist, like a professional bird watcher, essentially. So this was all when I was really young. So I wanted to be an ornithologist and I wanted to be a singer, a performer. I have a stellium and Leo in my chart. So I always have loved performing. And it's interesting for me now to look back on that because I do think my earliest kind of spiritual awareness and connections were through that. And during that time when I was really young, this is like under 7. And I have two amazing sisters, and our mom was always into things like astrology. And I remember seeing these Carlos Castaneda books around, who was like this groovy spiritual guy in the 70s. And this was like the early 80s. So I feel like that was a time when I felt very spiritually connected. And I had very intense dreams my whole life, very intense recurring dreams. And it was not always like a recurring narrative, but sometimes it was a recurring sensation. It's hard to describe, but looking back now, I feel like there was some kind of spiritual aspect to those
Mm.
dreams. And then as I got older, my parents split up when I was 7. We moved. I shut down in a lot of ways at that time and for a long time, just in terms of that kind of spiritual connectivity. And as I got older, I started having premonition dreams, usually about bad things that were going to happen. And that was really weird for me because I didn't know what to do with it. And I remember I would say out loud to grown-ups, "Oh, I dreamt this." And they would just be like, "Oh, that's weird. Haha, And like, what do you do with it when you've dreamt something really terrible that then happens? And then
Well, oh, so how old-ish are we talking here when this happened?
I feel like the first time I kind of consciously had a premonition where I really connected it and was like, oh my God, like this. And again, it was like the narrative and like the sensation. I feel like I was probably like 9. And that one I remember what it was, and it's not so bad that I can't share it, but it was a tornado. So I mostly grew up in Maryland, and we were at my grandmother's house. And Maryland is not an area where you get a lot of tornadoes. That's not the norm. And I had this really vivid dream that this tornado was coming. And then maybe a few days later, maybe a week later, we were at my grandmother's house. And I think in the dream, we were at my grandmother's, and it was like all over the news. Like there was a tornado, not just the warning, like the watch where they're watching out for it, but like it's here, take shelter, tornado.
Wow.
And I remembered it kind of feels like a cold bucket of water being dumped on your head when you're like, whoa, I dreamt this. I already experienced this. And that happened not all the time, but periodically throughout the rest of my childhood. And again, looking back, even though I had shut down my open adoration for nature, I'm very connected to trees. And really, all of my spiritual kind of opening and awakening as an adult happened in my late 30s. I had lived a life very disconnected for a long time. But looking back, when I was in that period where I kind of shut things down a little bit, there was this place I used to go in my suburban housing development where it was a tiny grove of trees with a little hill. And my dearest friend of all time and I used to go and sit there with these big trees. And really looking back, we were really being held and connected there. So there are little things throughout my childhood that are threads now that I look back and realize how connected I've always been. I remember consciously, probably around the time, again, I was probably like 8 or 9, like having my first sense of consciousness where I was like, okay, I'm having my perspective And then all these other perspectives are in these other bodies, and we all have different experiences and see things from this perspective. I remember like blowing my own mind,
Mm.
like really thinking about consciousness when I was like 9, 8 or 9.
Wow.
So it's funny to look back on that stuff. And I just grew up. And then when I was a teenager, it was the 90s. I got really into punk and experimental and the whole DIY scene. I know you and I have some things in common with that. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I came of age in that time. So much creativity, so much empowerment through the idea, like creating the things we wanted to see, right, in community. And I was very creative. One thing I did turn to again during that period as like an adolescent was art. After I wanted to be an ornithologist and a singer, I wanted to be a cartoonist. I would draw all the time and I played music. I played upright bass growing up. So I was a very creative kid. And so coming into kind of the DIY music scene was really empowering and amazing. And also, I think you've spoken about this too. There was this cynicism and like this cachet of cool, where like the more you knew about the cool films or the bands or whatever, that was like your currency. And there wasn't a lot of room for kind of like groovy spirituality in that scene, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm a Zennial, which I think is like analog childhood, digital adulthood. And I
Mhm.
think it might be like 73 to 83 or something like that. It's like a really specific window. When you were in those is that were priding themselves on knowing about alternative culture, it was a really difficult experience to explain to someone now who has access to social media, who has access to the internet or like music streaming services,
Yeah.
because there was such an initiation. Like you really had to be motivated to find the record or
Oh
like
my
find the
God.
t-shirt.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, I remember staying up. I was probably 12, and I remember staying up till like 3 a.m. to record a movie on TV with the VCR that was going to be on some random channel at like 2 a.m.
yeah.
and wanting to record it. And I believe it was Apocalypse Now,
Wow.
which which is just hilarious to think about. And then, yeah, you had to really want it. You had to like seek out the connections, the goods you had to go and find and buy. And then it was like this secret language that connected you with other people too.
And you're not like the first witchy friend of mine who has told me that we shared this experience, this really specific experience of seeking alternative culture. Like my ears are really perking up about the age of 12, because I also had this really specific
Yeah.
experience where everything changed for me around the age of 12. I used to stay up really late at night to watch 120 Minutes on MTV when
Yeah,
the
nice.
music came.
Yes, on Sunday nights. Me too. Yeah.
And looking at this now, and you and I have talked about this, I felt so much older than I was.
Yeah.
And when I think about watching the Doors movie all the time or reading Jim Morrison poetry at 12, now that I'm 40 something and can look at what a 12-year-old feels like to me, I'm like, oh my God, is
Right.
this okay? Like, was that
Right.
okay?
Right.
But what you're helping me realize is that there is this interesting thing about being someone who ends up somehow in the spiritual or mystical world, and how different experiences of either having a mentor or a parent or someone to talk to or a community versus not having that can really shape your experience with what kind of searcher you are, like how willing you are to like give your authority away, or if you prefer to do things on your own and in secret, or if you want something more structured. So like for you, it feels like for many different reasons, a lot of stuff was very private, it seems like, right? Like the trajectory of the dreams, there was no one to talk to about
Yeah.
your consciousness
Right.
explorations.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so when you did start to move in back into your spiritual opening and spiritual knowing, just for folks listening, I've had so many readings with Lisa because I love working with you probably the most regularly of anyone I work with for readings because I find your channel to be so powerful and so resonant and helpful for me. So, what were you doing when you started to, I kind of like dislike this phrase, but it's the best phrase, when you started to have your spiritual awakening, when it started
Yeah.
coming back online or opening, what was going on?
Yeah. So what was going on was I was coming out of my tower year. Yeah. So this was 2016, maybe. And so I was 38 and I had a 2-year-old baby, essentially. And I had just become a single parent. So my relationship with her dad had ended and was trying to figure that out and was really just at this moment of I had been through my 30s where the first half of my 30s I was like in bands and playing and working a day job, but very much doing a lot of creative work. And then my identity totally got turned upside down. I became a mom,
Mm,
had a baby. And then again, when you make the transition from being kind of a partnered parent to a single parent, I was just like, what is going on? Who am I? What is this life? Like, what am I doing? You know? And I had kind of numbed out in a lot of ways, like my identity or my sense of self kind of flattened because I was just in crisis mode. And then coming out of that, I turned to the tarot, which I had had a tarot deck for a long time, but I'd always been like, oh, this is just this thing that I can't do, like other people can do. But I started just working with the tarot. I started pulling a card a day. And I started having these little experiences of soul resonance, I think, and I don't know if you can relate to this or anyone listening, but it's like when you start to have these little sparks of, it can just be a moment of knowing something. You don't really know what it is, but it's like a little crumb that you acknowledge, and then it leads you to the next thing. And so I had all these moments where I remember one New Year's Eve and I was alone and I was just like, okay, what am I going to do? And there was this rose quartz crystal that a friend had given me. They had mined it in Texas and given me as a gift for cat sitting for them or something. And this little rose quartz was like sitting on the table. And I just looked at this rose quartz and it was just this knowing. I can't even describe it. It was just like, you're never going to be in this position again. It's time to open up. It's time to start moving towards yourself. And all of this was in this little piece of rose quartz.
wow.
And I had no idea what that meant. I was just, again, coming out of this period of being very flattened, very contracted. And then from there, I started working with the tarot. And then there was a series of things that happened. Again, it was just pulling this thread and just quietly building the trust in myself. I had a reading, and I don't know what order this all happened in because it's very blurry, but I had a psychic reading that totally blew my mind and kind of just opened up one little layer. Then I stumbled into a breathwork class at Maha Rose that used to be in Greenpoint here in Brooklyn. Didn't even know what breathwork was. It was like something compelled me to sign up online. It really was like I saw it, I signed up. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I needed to go, but I just followed. It wasn't even listening at that point. It was just like a compulsion kind of. Went to this breath work meditation. It totally changed my world. It showed me stuff from past lives, which I didn't even know what I thought about past lives, but I knew it was a past life in that
Mm,
experience. I had a wild experience went back, did breath work again. That was just like opening up these layers. And then simultaneously, I was working with the tarot, I was working with tarot, working with tarot, and then I felt compelled to start writing. And I don't even remember exactly how it happened, but all of a sudden, this automatic writing came online without me asking for it. This writing started coming through that was moving through me, not from my consciousness. And it was pages and pages and pages of stuff that was really wise and really wild. And again, I'm working my full-time day job, being a mom to my kid, have new friends, like in a relationship, like all this stuff. And I'm having private experiences where I'm just like, what is this? What is this? And I was able to share, again, my sisters are incredible. And I remember talking to my older sister, Emily, who's an astrologer, wasn't at the time, but now is an astrologer, and just trying to share was even hard because, like, how do you just bring this out of nowhere? I'm connecting with something like I'm channeling all this writing. But I think at first was kind of like, okay, and had some questions. And like over time, I think she too started having her own kind of awakening. And then our younger sister, Lynn, who, when we were in our 20s, our early 20s, Lynn's only 19 months younger than me. Lynn was the one of the three of us who, when we were in our 20s, she was a Reiki master by the time she was 21 or something. And at that time, again, I was like, oh, hippie stuff. But anyway, the writing came online, and that was really intense, honestly. That was a period, that was 2018, I think, when it really got intense. And I didn't know what to do with it. And
Mm.
I had an Akashic Records reading where I was told all this stuff, and they said, you aren't really ready for this yet, but we're telling you, and it's going to make sense later. And it was so much that it was overwhelming. And I kind of like spun out a little bit because I
Mm.
was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Because at first, it's kind of like you feel like, oh my God, I want to leave my whole life behind. And this is my whole life now. And I'm going to do all this stuff. And then you kind of, at least for me, I was like, wait, what am I doing? What? No, I'm not. And this is too much. And I don't know if I want it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I want to just make sure I say this thing, even though I don't want to go into it too much. But I have always had this belief that if there are three sisters and it's just three sisters, they're witches.
Yeah,
I have
for sure.
seen it in my
Oh,
family.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm okay. Well, you're all witches. So I hate to tell your
Yeah.
parents, but this is just the truth. Also, like, with the whole experience of 2015, 16, that time 17, I that's the exact same time when I started having all of these experiences.
Yeah.
I also was opened up by a psychic reading, which was the first time that I really even resonated or was interested in anything having to do with magic or mysticism. And I'm just thinking about this idea of those of us who are what some could perceive in sort of our dominant society's way of looking at time as late bloomers with these things that become so big in terms of how impactful they are, in terms of how much they mean for our identity. And I just wanted to call that out because for me, it does feel like there's a time release sometimes. Like you're this time release seed where it's okay, it's time. This is the moment, and how
Yeah.
nonlinear it is. For some folks, there's like, I'm studying the books and I'm doing it for 10 years, and there's this like
Right.
pace. And for in your story, there's so many moments where it's almost like a corridor into a new reality just like suddenly appears, and you just need
Right.
time.
And then you see the thread. You see the thread that has always been there and the essence of you that has always been there
Yes.
and has always known. And so I can say that since that period of 2018 of kind of freaking out and spinning out to now, it's been a really deep journey of returning again and again to myself. And when I work with people one on one, like that's what it is. Like whatever your channel opens you up to, because I think everyone is connected in this way. And the time release thing is interesting. I do remember, I think it was that first Akashic Records reading I had, where they said when you incarnated in this life, you decided ahead of time that you would not open up to this stuff until later. And I look back and I'm grateful to myself because I had a lot of fun. In a way, it's a little bit not simpler, but there's something to just living your life like as you're living it. But I think between 2018 and now, I've had all kinds of wild experiences. I've had the incredible privilege of reading for other people and connecting with other people in that way. And all of it just both like strengthens my connection and understanding of my own soul, my own essence, and my connection to all that is and other people. And I think, in a way, the gift of having that come online later is that I do have a lot of life experience that I have come into this with. I had already
Mm.
been through a lot of life's big initiations before kind of coming into this experience. And it's interesting. I do wonder how does that impact how we open up in these ways, you know? Yeah.
Totally. I was just talking to somebody. I had a reading with somebody that I traded with recently. It was actually really, really interesting. And they gave me this visual of my own energy that came through for them right away. And I wonder if you'll relate to this, which is like they saw this unicorn horn on me and they were like, it's itchy, it's kind of bothering you, but you also have these two devil's horns to the left and right that balance you out. And they were talking about how there's a part of me that wants to play scientist or ask questions and analyze things to balance out that direct channel or inner knowing that the unicorn represents. And she said this thing to me, which was like, a lot of the way you go back and forth or what you might perceive as slow yourself down. Yeah, sometimes it's your conditioning, you're trying to talk yourself out of things, but a lot of times it's because you came to earth to understand people. You want to understand
Yeah.
how normal human life functions so that when you do delve into your mysticism or you receive different messages, you know how to translate it, you know who you're talking to, you have like empathy and sympathy and compassion for living life without that knowledge as easily accessible to you all the time. And I feel like that is what has been such a humbling privilege for me in so many ways to come into this part of my identity later in life because I see a purpose in all of it. There was a moment, I think, in 2018 or 17 where I was like, this is everything before was garbage.
Right.
What
Right.
was that about? And
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about also how people's channels decide to open up the moments, the readings, the practices, the crystals, the little life experience like breadcrumbs that are such a huge part of the plot. And so for you, what I'm really curious about is then how did you start to develop your skills, one, and two, like what was your experience of starting to come out of the closet with this skill set and this knowing?
Well, it's ongoing. In terms of developing with like formal training, I've done tarot courses and I did Reiki 1 training and I recently did a mediumship mentorship, which was so interesting and really cool. But it's mostly been kind of self-guided, reading books and listening to my guides, connecting to my guides and learning and working on committing to really, again, just following the thread, opening up to practice what I'm being called to practice. And it is a practice. So, for example, I started with like automatic writing And that quickly became interwoven with my tarot practice, which when I first started doing readings for people, it was all written. I would pull cards and I would channel writing. And that's where I got the validation when I started doing that, looking for kind
Mm.
of external validation, because I started doing that for friends and people were like freaking out. I mean, like tears, and like, this resonates so deeply with me. And I was like, oh, okay. Because even still, when I sit down to do a reading with someone, I don't know what's going to come through. And I still have moments where I'm like, is it going to work?
Mm. Yeah.
And then at some point, again, there are these little moments along the way. There was a big upgrade for me there. When was this? Do you remember? It was like this call for a national night of like meditation. Was that 2020?
It was probably 2020.
Probably there was a big thing, and I did it. I sat down and meditated with this global meditation thing, and something opened up. And that's when I really started feeling called to do more kind of verbal channeling and letting
Mm.
it move through me that way. And that was wild. And again, was another moment where, in some ways, scary.
Yeah.
And not scary in that I felt like I was being harmed in any way, but scary in that I was like, I'm scared to come out with this.
Yeah.
I'm scared of how I'm going to be perceived. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I want this. Can't I
Yeah.
just be like a psychic medium who talks to dead people instead of this? And I know you've talked about this as well, the kind of stigma of channeling galactic or cosmic energies, or just in general channeling, I think has this reputation that I subscribed to.
Totally.
But again, I kind of would go away from it and then come back to it, and still I go through cycles where sometimes I'll kind of have to put things on pause a little bit and then get back into it. But really, the practice for me and the development has been in showing up and listening and surrendering a little bit and saying,
Mm.
okay, I'm just going to keep following the thread. I'm just going to keep opening up to what's being asked of me. And it has unfolded from there.
Yeah, I think this is an important thing to talk about because this is pretty obvious maybe to some people, but it wasn't obvious to me a long time ago. I remember the first time Oprah or somebody was like, courage isn't about not being scared, it's about being afraid and doing it anyway. And I remember this was like years ago, I heard her say that. And I have mixed feelings about Oprah right now, but at the time I was like pretty into her. And it really blew my mind because I experience so much fear all the time. I have since I was little. And sometimes when I look back at the things I have done or said out loud or put into the public, I will be like, I can't believe you did that. And I feel like as an Aries, I get so excited and wrapped up that I don't give myself time to think about it until it's like already kind of out in the world. But I think that it's so important for people to hear how people's internal experiences can be. Because for me, when I sit with you, because I've worked with you so many different times at this point, I have complete and utter confidence in all of your abilities and the experience that I will have because I'm in my experience where I'm in front of the curtain, I'm not behind the curtain,
Right.
and I would never guess, honestly, as a client, that you would experience any kind of little piece of doubt. And maybe that's because we really resonate with each other. I don't know. But I love having these conversations with people because we can see in through the mirror of others how someone can be so clear or so powerful or so in tune. And also just want to say that word clear again because that's what I feel from you. I feel this very clean space of very little sort of personal projection, which is why I love to work with you. And how as our human selves and our bodies with the experiences we have and who knows what other experiences we've had outside these lifetimes, there's a process.
Yeah, totally. And thank you. That's so kind. And I think to your point about whether we just resonate. I mean, there always is special resonance. I don't think it's our first rodeo together. So I think we do have special resonance. But I will say, when I am reading and channeling, especially for other people, but also for myself, because I do channel for myself, all the doubts go away as soon as the connection opens. And the practice for me is just the trust and the remembering. That's it. It's always right there. And even at the moments where I've been riddled with the most doubt or the most feeling disconnected from my practice, it is right there. And I have learned to really trust in that. And I have such gratitude for that. And I don't know if that's everyone's experience. It's my experience, but it's so reliable. And I will still have doubt, and I know that it is so incredibly reliable. And it's the most consistent thing in
Yeah.
my life, in a way, just in terms of it being there, like the connection. And I think that's true for everyone. I think it can show up and manifest in different ways. Yeah.
You're also reminding me about something I didn't understand maybe in the beginning of getting really interested in mysticism or spirituality, which was that we have such a focus on information in our
Mm.
way of constructing the world or reality or even thinking about truth. It depends on the accuracy of the information, which of course is important. But I feel like what you're speaking to a little bit, even in this conversation around doubt, is that channeled information is about holding a frequency, and that frequency is a partnership between what your body can hold, what your spirit can hold, your connection to the earth, your connection to the above. And as you're channeling that energy in, it's doing more than giving you information, right? Something else is
Oh, yeah.
happening. Can you speak to your
Yeah.
experience or your
Yeah.
understanding of that?
And I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. When we channel, it is, and this is where we think about channeling as this kind of stigmatized thing that kind of is isolated or something. But all of this stuff is connected, is interconnected. And when we channel, we, in a way, are engaging in this thing that encompasses all of these other things like energy healing, connection, mediumship, like all of these things are all in there when we channel. I don't totally know how to put this into words, but I will say the frequency channeling to me is about holding the frequency, and it is about receiving the frequency. It's about receiving the energy. And sometimes, in my experience, some of the moments where what I do has shifted in a big way comes with a very palpable, energetic, physical kind of upgrade
Mm,
or shift that is received through channeling. And what that does, from my experience, and again, I speak from my experience, and I don't know if it's like this for everyone else, but it's almost feels like this energy work on a DNA level that then allows like an expansion so that you can receive more or
yeah.
different. And so I really have come to know that when I channel, it's very physical, it's very energetic, and there is energy healing that happens, even if I'm just sitting and doing a quick written message for myself. There's an energetic frequency that comes in and heals and soothes and sometimes activates. Like a lot of times when I channel, and if I do this in group settings, like I sweat a ton.
Mm.
And then I also think for other people too, if you are on the receiving end in a kind of a channeling experience, I think there's energetic frequency work that's happening for everyone involved. And so when you receive, yes, it's information. People want to know, they want to mentally understand or be able to have some kind of idea of certainty or something like that. But really, it is so much more than that. Yeah.
It's so interesting too, because I also get really hot when I'm doing things and I'll have a lot of resistance to doing like my month ahead, this or that, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, just get this done. Like it needs to be done today. But it's like my body has to shift gears in such a way that I sometimes take for granted is like in that moment, my body's not ready to do that. Or it's not a task on your list of to dos when you're like bringing in a
Yeah.
certain kind of information or energy. And I guess there's two kind of like last questions I have for you. The first one is back around to this idea of time release. So I have really been excited about 2026, 2027. I first heard the idea of these years of big change, I think, through Lee Harris, who was a channeler's work. And I remember being like, yes, there was just like a feeling of, yes, puzzle piece. I need to remember this. And it's also a big thing in human design and gene keys that they talk about, as well as countless other ancient, old prophecies.
Yeah.
So, what is your sense of this moment that we're in, or do you resonate with that idea that we're like in this moment of a shift? And that's kind of part one of the question. And then the second part is to me, my experience, your experience, this opening of people to channeling, to mysticism, the widening circle of even astrology becoming more and more like socially acceptable. It's connected to me to that consciousness shift somehow. So, yeah, what are your thoughts about either the shift and how our intuitive practices or opening to channel is connected to that shift?
Yeah, I think yes, we are in a shift. And I think it's hard to deny that. Like, how could anyone deny that? Like, things are changing. And I haven't really channeled about this. In 2020, there was a lot of information that came through my channel about what was happening and why. That
Mm,
was really comforting to me. And I think we know like that was the beginning of this big shift. And to me, my sense of what that is that people use language, I think, that sometimes doesn't totally get to it because it's often like this, like ascension or opening.
mm,
And to me, it's like a remembering, it's a reconnection to what has always been, but we wouldn't have had access to it until now. And I think as people open up to these different ways of perceiving and creating and understanding our earth and our humanity and the connection. And like we as humans are such an essential part of the connective tissue of all of
mm,
this. And so I think more and more people are going to continue to come online. And I really think the kids who are coming up right now and who are being born and who are coming of age and all these things right now already have some kind of different kind of layer or ability to just be with this kind of energy in a way that for maybe those of us who are in these moving towards being the elders, it's different for them, I think, than it is for us. And I think for everyone who is starting to have these experiences and is wondering what they're supposed to do with it or how they can continue to live their lives and do, whatever it is, I think the important part of this shift right now is that everyone just really develop their own sense of self-trust. And this is what you teach. This is what you do such a beautiful job of teaching is just how to recognize and hold your own frequency. And
mm,
then that allows you to kind of recognize and hold all frequencies in a way and be open to it and not judge what another person's kind of frequency connection is or something like that.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's an important moment that's going to continue to unfold over the next definitely few years. And I don't know, as much as it's been an incredibly challenging time, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful for what's to come.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in either pulling a card or sharing a message for anyone who's just listening to this?
I totally can. I got my Sacred Symbols Oracle deck out. I think that'll be a good one, which is not tarot per se, but all right. Okay, so we're just going to pull a card asking what is the message that we most need to hear right now, the most beneficial. We got meditate. I'll pull one more and then I'll channel for both of them. Oh, interesting. Affluence. Meditate and affluence. All right, so let's see what wants to come through with these. For this, whoever's listening. This is an important time for everyone to consider what it is that you've been resisting, what it is that you have been called to connect with that you continue to avoid. For the majority of you, that is a call to return inward. That is a call to bring a sense of quiet reflection to your energy, to your daily routine. There is no need to hide behind the long lists of things that you must do, the long list of things that you're working to bring into existence. Yes, you must continue to work on the things that you're working on. That's true. But right now, more than anything, we want you to return back to the core of your own energy and simply open up to whatever the messages are for you in that space. We all sometimes need a reminder of who we are and why we're here. And for many of you, it feels easier to look outside of yourselves for the answers to those questions. But this is just our reminder to you that those answers are actually already existing within you. So please set aside even just a few minutes each day, even just 7 minutes a day would be enough time for you to begin to reconnect with this energy that you may be avoiding. And you may be avoiding simply because your nervous system is feeling fragmented at this time. So come back home, come back to the knowing, come back to the essence of your own energy. And remember that sometimes you've closed a door inside that is blocking the essence of that energy from coming through in its full complexity and warmth. Now, in terms of affluence, this is a mindset. This is something that we want you to consider as you're moving into the energy of the next year. What does it mean to have an abundance of resources? What does it mean to feel like you are the one who's going to create the affluence in your own life? This is a time where the reorientation and reconfiguration of resources is at the forefront for humanity. Most of you consider the word affluence and you think of a certain kind of affluence. You think of a certain kind of person who is affluent. And this feels outside of you. This feels far away from you. This feels like something that is not meant for you. But we want you to consider as a collective and in your individual lives what an affluent world would look like. What would it look like? What would it feel like to have affluence be the default energy of your daily life? One exercise that could be fun is imagining this concept of affluence when you're walking through the forest or when you are looking at a beautiful lake or another natural resource. Consider the affluence of a tree and allow yourself to slip into the skin of something that feels affluent. This is one of the key changes that is coming in the next few years is the reorientation of these resources and the reconfiguration of affluence in your world. So really, for right now, that is what we want to share. Please remember to take time to reconfigure and reorient your energy around the idea of affluence. And please take time to sit in the great expanse of your own internal energy. And even if you cannot tolerate more than a minute or two of this in the beginning, remember that it's a practice and that you will expand your capacity over time. Yes. And that's all we wish to share for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. I think that's such a beautiful note to end on. And I just want to ask you where folks can find you, where can they connect with you? Also, just to say the easiest way to connect with Lisa, Lisa's going to be offering a intro to channeling class on December 10th, and we'll leave all the links to sign up. I think this is a really perfect opportunity to open up to this for people of all levels so that we can hear from you about your experience with channeling and how others can open. But yeah, where else can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so right now the best way to connect with me is on Instagram, which is just at Middle Sister Tarot. I will have a new website, I hope, early in the new year. But right now it's really mostly Instagram. And then from there you can link to book readings and things like that. But that's really it. You can also, from my Instagram page, sign up for my newsletter, which is another great way to stay up to date on the channeling circles I've been hosting and things like that. And get
Yeah,
discounts on readings because I often do little bonuses for people on the mailing list.
Yeah, we'll leave all the links to your newsletter, to your Instagram in the show notes. And I also do recommend Lisa's channeling circles. It's a really great way to dip into the energy of her work and also to meet other like-minded people and to just receive like support and nourishment to do, as the message said, to tune into yourself for a second if it's hard for you to do that on your own. So highly recommend. And yeah, thank you, Lisa, so much for being here. Excited to see you
Yeah.
on the 10th. And thanks
I'm
everyone
so
for
excited.
listening.
Thanks so much.
Okay, gardeners, hope you enjoyed that episode and that those messages bring you some solace and support as you step into the new year. I hope to see some of you on the 10th for Intro to Channeling and some of you on the 19th for the Solstice and Three Eye Atlas events. And thank you so much for being here. Your being part of this community means so much to me, and I'm so grateful for you. Take care, gardeners.